Is it time? Is 2025 the year the Sixers have to restart their process again? With the worst record at this point of the season since the Jahlil Okafor days, the team seems completely disoriented. They've lost their will. The fans don't understand anything. They don't understand why Embiid's unavailable because of the franchise's lack of transparency, and they don't know why the team can't function without him. And most of all, they don't understand how a roster that looked so good in the summer is out of the playoffs. So, it's time to push the button. With the construction of a new arena projected for 2031, management's going to want to have a competitive roster at that time. Right? Well, if you think so, I've got some bad news. The Sixers can't trade Embiid until next offseason. Why? Because he was re-signed last summer. But beyond trading the superstar who's been the identity of the franchise for the past decade, Daryl Morey could start pulling strings to get Philadelphia back to its historic place. How? As per usual, we have to start at the beginning. It was all the way back in 2013 when the Sixers embarked on their new era, a stage that received the name that even to this day is still used, the process. A revolutionary idea of Sam Hinkie that consisted of moving between the limits of the rules. That served as a precedent for the model that teams use to rebuild today. Shout out Sam Presti, by the way. Hinkie was the first general manager to accumulate draft capital as if he had hoarding syndrome. But with that, he only had one goal: to find a superstar. Something they accomplished when, with the third pick of the 2014 draft, the Sixers landed Joel Embiid. The Cameroonian was exactly what they needed. After his two first years of being injured, he became the centerpiece of an emerging prospect that aspired to any goal. And the truth is that those years were really hopeful. The Sixers had a breakout season in which they went from 28 to 52 wins in 2018 during Ben Simmons' rookie season. But after the NBA itself intervened in the controls of the franchise to replace Sam Hinkie with Brian Colangelo, the problems began to arrive. Colangelo's tenure at the helm was terrible in every aspect. Not only was he caught with burner accounts on Twitter criticizing the team's players and coach in an event that fans dubbed Burnergate, but he squeezed every last asset the Sixers had accumulated to try and be competitive. The Sixers began surrounding Embiid with talent that was insufficient to contend for a championship, by placing Al Horford at power forward in a terrible fit that could never work, by being unable to get a backup center that could serve as a useful replacement for Joel Embiid in the playoffs, or by being unable to find two-way wings to bring athleticism to a roster that desperately needed it. In short, the situation, despite nearly reaching the conference finals in 2019, was an unmitigated disaster. And that's when Morey arrived. After 9 straight winning seasons as a GM for the Rockets, the Sixers' new president of basketball operations was determined to create a championship roster. First, it was with Harden, who he ended up getting for Ben Simmons after his drama, and now with Paul George. Every summer it seems like the moves the front office are making are the best thing for the team. A few months ago, they took the theoretically most valuable player in the entire free agent pool, but for some reason, this hasn't worked out either. The reason? Well, Joel Embiid's health. He's never healthy in the playoffs. In 2018, he suffered an orbital fracture concussion caused by his own teammate, Markelle Fultz. In 2019, knee tendinitis. In 2021, a torn meniscus, which remains his biggest kryptonite to date. In 2022, another orbital fracture and a torn thumb ligament. In 2023, a knee sprain, and in this past year, in 2024, he suffered a relapse of his meniscus injury after a self-alley-oop against the Knicks. Now, despite all those injuries, he's played 54 of 61 games during his playoff career. He's shown an incredible resilience to keep playing, even though it was detrimental to his long-term health. And not only that, in addition, he's carried his team in each and every postseason, with the team going down when he wasn't on the court. However, none of that has been enough. His averages have dropped in the playoffs compared to the regular season, as have those of the best teammates he's had during his Sixers tenure. Ben Simmons' disaster against the Atlanta Hawks, James Harden's 4 stinkers against the Celtics in 2023, despite his 2 big games, the continuous disappointments of Tobias Harris in the deciding games, and the non-existent playoffs that Paul George will be able to play at the end of this disastrous season. As if it were a curse that can't be lifted, the Sixers crash in the moments of truth. No matter who's on the team, no matter the coach. Brett Brown, Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse, it doesn't seem to matter. They just disappear. And now, there seems to be no solution. Embiid seems to have exhausted every resource in his body at this point. He seems slower, less agile, and unable to stay healthy for several games in a row. When he's available, as in the 8-win, 2-loss streak the Sixers put together in December, including an incredible home win over the defending champs on Christmas Day, everything works. Everything looks like it's going to go right. But then, for no apparent reason, he misses 4 games in a row. A restriction that doesn't allow the Sixers to stay afloat. Now, Sixers fans, boy, they've been through a lot. The early process tanking, the failed picks of Fultz and Okafor, the Ben Simmons drama, the James Harden drama, that Kawhi Leonard shot. You could say they're tired. And you know how Philly fans are. A fan base that doesn't mind showing their discontent. Paul George is already going through that process where enthusiasm turns to booing.
And still doing other things. Paul George, corner 3, on front iron. Foul on Caleb Martin.
With the fans already tired, it's natural to wonder, has the point of no return already arrived? The Sixers have managed to draft 2 gems with non-lottery picks in recent years. Tyrese Maxey was a boon to a project that seemed stagnant. His electric play provided Embiid with a guard to play the 2-man offense. However, the showing he's had as a first option, it hasn't been very encouraging. Despite being a great second option, he's not capable of carrying this team currently. However, McCain, the jewel that they found in the last draft, and who's going to spend the whole season out due to injury, has an unknown potential. In the short time of the season in which he was able to show it, his performance was incredible. We already dedicated a video to him on the channel, but it's still too early to know how good this kid can be. Could the Sixers start building directly on him? Well, it's an option. However, Philadelphia's parted with a good portion of their draft capital trying to maximize Embiid's window. Tanking isn't possible this season because their own draft pick would only be executed by the Sixers if it ended up in the top 6 after the lottery. So the plan would be to get as many assets as possible for the players Philadelphia has now. If Gobert was traded for 5 first-round picks at the time, there's no doubt a player like Embiid would have good market value. Something similar to the case of Maxey in case the management wanted to start from scratch. But a different case than Paul George, with whom the Sixers would surely have to add draft assets to remove the contract from their payroll. So, with a really complicated sporting and economic situation, the opinion of the fans is divided. Some advocate starting from scratch, rebuilding the roster so that in 2031, the Sixers, when they open their new arena, will be in good position to contend for everything. But many others still have the memory of how good Joel Embiid is. A player who just a year ago was averaging 35.3 points, 11.3 rebounds, and 5.7 assists per night, with shooting splits of 53, 37, and 88 just before the injury that robbed him of the chance to earn his second MVP. Morey and his team have to consider the fact that the soon-to-be 31-year-old Embiid will probably continue to have nagging knee problems for the rest of his career. So whatever decision they make, the Sixers are going through a complicated, process. A lot of people are going to oppose whatever direction they decide to take when management decides what to do. And a decision that, if it takes too long to make, could plunge one of the franchises with one of the largest markets in the country into misery. Maybe the time has come to press the button once and for all.